A lot of people, they say, oh, we enjoy the show, right? But every time we try and laugh, we realise how offensive the jokes are, and we try and rein ourselves in and stop ourselves from laughing. If that's you, don't do that. Just get on board right now, right? Because if you laugh at a joke that people find offensive, nobody's going to judge you. But if I tell a joke that nobody laughs at that's offensive, everyone's going to judge me. So get on board, ladies and gentlemen. And I think in that nature of offence, I think we have the secret to human nature there, ladies and gentlemen. I think in that duality, I think the reason people are so offended by stand-up comedy is also the reason people are so scared to do stand-up comedy. So I think deep down in that primal part of our brain, what we don't even consciously realise is what we fear the most is group rejection. We fear the most opening ourselves up to our tribe, showing ourselves at our weakest, at our most vulnerable, and then having that tribe laugh at our pain and reject us. I think that's what we fear the most. So when we, the comedian, take that risk every night, you, the audience, need to buck your ideas up, you little shit pussies, okay? Second thing I will say is I have absolutely no answers to the current division society faces. I have absolutely no way of healing the divide society currently has. Like, I do this for a living. I spend most of my day in my boxes, smoking weed, scrolling through online comment forums. I am one joint away from becoming either an incel or joining ISIS. There is no way I am going to be the man who brings the world together. I just have a lot of questions, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of questions, like why could so many white people and so many right-wing people sympathise with Liam Neeson wanting to axe murder black people, but couldn't sympathise with the girl who was groomed into being a sex slave? Why could so many left-wing people and people of colour sympathise with Shamima Begum wanting to join a terrorist organisation hell-bent on destroying the West, but couldn't sympathise with a man who had a mental breakdown, albeit a racist mental breakdown, when his friend was raped? Why can R. Kelly get erections, but I can't? The big questions, ladies and gentlemen, because would you agree with the statement that 15 years ago, things seemed easier? Yeah. 15 years ago, right seemed right, wrong seemed wrong, black seemed black, white seemed white. 15 years ago, I was innocent, I was ignorant, I was just a boy with a fucking shit soul patch in nightclubs chasing up girls, right? 15 years ago, the most racism I had to deal with was from an elderly woman who lived near us on the estate I lived in Newcastle. Every time she'd see me, she'd be like, oh, you look, you're always out here causing trouble. I'd say, you're thinking of the wrong one, that's my brother who's always out here causing trouble. And she'd go, well, you look the same, don't you? But Grandma had a lot of problems, you know, so... But since those 15 years have passed, ladies and gentlemen, the list of things I have, the list of heroes I've grown up watching, TV shows I've grown up watching, institutions that have helped shape the man you see in front of you, the list of that I've now been exposed as racist, homophobic, sexist, ableist, heightist, gingerist, you name it. Sorry, mate. Well, that goes on, ladies and gentlemen. But luckily for you, I have that list right here. Would you like to go through it? Yes! Well, strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen, because it is a very long list. J.K. Rowling, Rachel Riley, Apu from The Simpsons, James Franco, Bill Cosby, Louis C.K., Cardi B, the Dalai Lama, Aziz Ansari, Alex Salmond, Richard Pryor, Peter Beardsley, Gaza, The Lost Prophets, Chris Brown, Cristiano Ronaldo, Takeshi 69, Kodak Black, Johnny Depp, Michael Jackson, Matt Damon, Harvey Weinstein. It's just this for the next hour, by the way, guys. Jeremy Corbyn, the entire Labour Party, the entire Conservative Party, the entire Liberal Democratic Party, Rihanna, Shaquille O'Neal, John Mayer, Alan Davies, the BBC, Roald Dahl, kebab shops, my mum, your mum, my grandma, 52% of the UK, dolphins, all of the United States of America, Mother Teresa, Steve Jobs, Liam Gallagher, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, George Washington, Christopher Columbus, Abraham Lincoln, Kinder Eggs, Bacon, Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, Woody Allen, Jared from Subway, the creator of Ren and Stimpy, Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys, Terry Crews, Michael Jackson again, Morrissey, James Gunn, Morgan Freeman, Krispy Kreme, Dr. Pepper, Jared Leto, Chris Hemsworth, Einstein, Childish Gambino, Lemony Snicket, Moby, Comic Relief, Oxfam, Toy Story 4, T.S. Eliot, Roald Dahl, Elvis, Idris Elba, Stephen Fry, Ricky Gervais, John Cleese, Joe Brand, Matt Berry, Friends, Joey Barton, Sean Walsh, Daniel Kitson, Sheck West, Tupac, Biggie, Nas, Eminem, Cash Me Outside Girl, how about that? Knowles Barkley, Mother Teresa, and as of this week, Eamon Holmes, Alex Boardman, George Zack, and AC Slater from Saved by the Bell. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? No questions, fair enough. I mean, there's a wide variety of crimes on that list, you know what I mean? Some of them have just said something politically incorrect on Twitter, some of them have committed mass genocide, right? Very wide variety of crimes. What they all share in common is that every single person or institution or TV show on that list has been held up on social media, been vilified, and there's been the argument that we should cancel them. Now, we can't deal with every single thing on that list, because if we did, we'd be here till 2034, when the UK is still trying to negotiate its way outside of Brexit, under the stewardship of the reanimated corpse of Barry Chuckle, and America is currently led by an authoritarian coalition between Kylie Jenner and a sentient Amazon Alexa. I don't know. But we can't deal with everything on that list, so we'll start with the easiest, ladies and gentlemen. The one that brings, I find, this country together. The one that starts the least arguments at the dinner table. Let's start with the aforementioned Brexit, ladies and gentlemen. So, I'm from the northeast of England. I love a scrap. I love a fight, me, right? So for me, Brexit wasn't divisive enough. So I think we should have a referendum of our own. Give us a cheer if you voted for Brexit.
Yes.
A few, fair enough, you stick to your beliefs. Don't you let the fact that, you know, people bully you out of you exercising your democratic right. Don't you let the fact, love, that every single person in this room currently hates you change your mind. Give me a cheer if you did not vote for Brexit. Get her! Get her! Get her! I'm only joking. This is the thing, right? I thought, like, I voted Remain. Honestly, that's where I stand. But this show is about bringing people of different political opinions together. I voted Remain, but I thought it was very harsh how the media sort of split it into sort of, you know, good versus evil, racist versus non-racist. Because I don't think you're racist, love. I don't think it's fair. I had family, I had friends who voted racist. Leave, not racist. Nah, because like I got an auntie, right? Now she's so close to the family, we pretty much call her grandma. She ain't got no direct family of her own. She's helped raise every one of us, right? Now she voted Brexit, right? And speaking to her about it at a wedding showed me how much nuance there was to the debate, right? Because her English isn't the best, but I asked her why she voted Leave. She responded to me in her thick Indian accent. She went, Rahul! I voted Leave, same reason everybody else in this country voted Leave. Immigration, immigration, immigration. Like, fair enough, Grandma. You may have a problem with the quantity of immigration, I can see that point. You don't find that a little bit ironic, though? Perhaps even hypocritical, considering you yourself are an immigrant. And she genuinely went, yes, but I was immigrant in the 60s. I was here first. And then she said something I'll never forget, because then she went, it's just too much, Rahul, too much. It's these bloody white people coming to this country trying to steal all the jobs we already stole from the original white people. It was baffling, right? But as I say, I got no answers, ladies and gentlemen. I just have questions. So my first question to you, is my auntie a racist? Oh, look at the white people tense up. You don't know how to answer that question, do you? You just sat there and go, shit, is she what is racism? I don't know. I mean, can brown people be racist? I mean, it sounds like she's doing a racist impersonation of her own accent, but can brown people be racist? And let alone, even if they can, do I want to say that to her somebody who considers himself her grandson? Do I want to say that to his face when I can see him right here? Like, look, I will say this, right? I'm not sure I would call her a racist. I think perhaps that might be the issue. We've been defining people by their worst crimes, but I definitely say her reasons for voting and her vote was a racist action. I mean, she's just ignored the fact that she's an immigrant herself and stopped people climbing up the ladder. She's climbed up the ladder herself and pulled it up from her. And while I don't think voting Brexit equates to racism, I'll definitely say it did lead to a rise in hate crime, because I was the victim of that hate crime, ladies and gentlemen. I saw that firsthand, because the week after the referendum result, I left a comedy club in Glasgow, a bar called Yes Bar, the product of another referendum. It was about midnight. I was heading to a cash point at Glasgow Queen Street to get some money out for a taxi home. As I was heading there, all of a sudden this big bald bloke started following me. Right now I'm starting to get a little bit worried. I'm thinking, in this current climate, I might get threatened, I might get mugged, I might get attacked. I have no idea. But as I get the cash point, I bump into a guy very smartly dressed. He's in a suit, tie, shoes. He's got slick back hair. As we bumped into each other, we both had our cards out to use the machine. I gave way to him. I said, crack on, mate, you first. And this guy in the suit, he went, oh, I'll crack on, mate. It's my fucking country. Now me, being the hardened, northern, manly man I am, started to cry. But before a tear could leave my eye, the big bald guy behind me, I assumed was a neo-Nazi, just suddenly went, "Hey! I'm not having that! It's my country as well! And you're getting Chenjawi Fanny!" Walked up to this guy, grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, headbutted him, knocked him out cold, turned back to me, panicked, and just went, "Hey! Sorry about Brexit, mate!" and ran away. That's not what happened. Baffling, right? But here's another question for you, ladies and gentlemen. Who is the bigger villain in that story? All right, here's an easier question for you. Who is the racist in that story? The guy in the suit. Incorrect. It is me for assuming all bald white men are Nazis. That's 45% of the UK. And on top of that, I did an incredibly racist Scottish accent. That's terrible. I mean, and the irony is I get very pissed off when people do my accent, because when people not from the Northeast try and do the Northeast accent, it sounds identical to whenever anyone not from India tries to do the Indian accent, right? And that's because whenever anyone not from the Northeast tries to do the Northeast accent, or whenever anyone not from India tries to do the Indian accent, every fucking time it comes out sounding Welsh, without fail. But you got Brexit here, and I mean you got Trump in America. It would definitely seem to some extent fascism is back in fashion. I mean, I mean, you could say racism is the new black, but have we got any Trump fans in here? Just me. As a comedian, Trump is the gift that keeps on giving. Love that guy, man. I wouldn't have been able to write this show without him. But I mean, I do wonder how we got here. Now, I have to say, look, if you do like Trump, right, and if you voted Brexit, I hold nothing against you, right? Genuinely, I empathise and sympathise with nationalism to a degree myself. Like, I mean, I think nationalism can be a good thing, like Scottish nationalism, or like the Japanese nationalism that incentivises Japanese citizens not to litter on their streets and tidy up litter that isn't even their own, to be kinder to strangers who are fellow citizens and their neighbours, and be kinder to tourists, to show people what their country is all about. And I think I'm a nationalist, right, because I'm quite left-wing with my political opinions. I'd probably call myself a socialist. I believe in a sense of the collective. I believe in the community. I believe in a country. I think if you define my identity politically, I think nationalist socialist is a perfectly fair term. Not that I would ever vote for Brexit or Trump. I've got morals, do you know what I mean? But I am a proud nationalist socialist, that's without denial. But I do wonder how we got here, ladies and gentlemen. How we got to such a point of division where, 50% of this country are racists. The other 50% are traitors. Like, how did we get to a point in the world where I've seen the leader of the free world, the President of the United States of America, arguably the most powerful man on this planet, clothesline Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 23? Like, how did we get to this point? And I think my first port of call, ladies and gentlemen, would be social media. The social network made by anti-social people. The thing with social media that we don't realise is it should be very complicated, shouldn't it? Like, I think we're going to look at social media in 20 years' time like a tool that was meant to advance human productivity beyond measure, but then in the end just fucked up everything, just broke all of the children. Just look at them. Like, I think in 20 years' time we'll look at social media the same way Chernobyl looks at nuclear power. That's where I reckon we'll be. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously Chernobyl was worse. I'm not denying that. Like, Facebook has kids giving like the thumbs up. Like, Chernobyl had kids giving 3 thumbs up. Like, obviously it was a worse thing there. But like, social media should be inherently a complicated thing, shouldn't it? It is 7 billion different opinions that you see on your newsfeed in front of you, just endlessly scrolling along. Each one of those opinions are different. And within each one of those opinions, every single word we would use, we would all define slightly differently. Even if it's a word as simple as and, the, or it, we would all define those words differently. You need to convey that nuance, that difference, that life experience that led you to form this particular opinion you have in 140 characters. And what we always forget is that we all bring our own connotations to every single thing we see. So you say, if I was to say what you just did was racist, all I might mean is your use of the word Paki might upset some Asians, right? You might hear, I'm as bad as Hitler, right? If I was was to say you, sir, you have just been sexist or misogynistic, all I might mean is your use of the word bitch might upset certain women around the world. What you might hear is, I'm a rapist, right? You, sir, if you were to tell me you've taken up vaping, you might mean to tell me you've given up a lifelong addiction that was ruining your lungs and your life. I hear you've taken up being a fucking bellend. Like, we all bring different connotations to the opinions we see on social media. And as I say, I just don't think 140 characters is enough to sort of convey that nuance. Now, what we always need to remember about social media is, in this endless scrolling of information, it turns the past into the present into forever. What pisses me off the most about social media is that it allows one person to speak for entire groups. Like, I saw an article the other day, right? It was about bastardizing the bindi and other cultural symbols. And the argument to this article was essentially that white women need to stop wearing the bindi. It is racist, it is cultural appropriation, and Indians are sick of it. I mean, really, there are 1.4 billion Indians in India alone. Never mind the diaspora around the world. Have you taken a survey? Because if you've not, then if white women can't wear the bindi, I'm not sure you get to speak for all of us. Because let me tell you this, my Brexit voting grandma, if I was to bring a white woman home, well, she would be a little bit upset. And that's because my Brexit voting grandma is a racist cunt. But if I was to bring a white woman home wearing a bindi, but shit, all we need to do is get her a sari and some fake tarnish, job done! And on top of that, have you met the type of white women that wear bindi, that are into Indian culture, that are into spirituality and Hinduism, do yoga, all that kind of shit? I mean, half those women are called India to begin with, let them be! Listen, white women, you want to do yoga, you want to wear a bindi, you want to fuck a brown guy, you just met at a comedy gig, you do what you want, don't listen to the haters. This is it, man. It argues particular narratives, right? Because it wants to get in that bit. Not that bit that makes you think, that bit that makes you feel. The same bit I, as a comedian, want to get into. The same thing your date might want to get into. The same thing that businesses want to get into. Because that's all Facebook is. It's a business trying to get into that primal part of your brain, trying to get you to feel something, to manipulate your mind, to then manipulate you to keep you on there and keep spending money on there. I had a business do this to me the other day. They said, Raul, tag yourself at our premises and you will get access to the free Wi-Fi if you tag yourself here on Facebook. And I thought, no. Archway Sexual Health Clinic, I will not tag myself at your premises for access to the free Wi-Fi. 3G and a negative result will do just fine. Thank you very kindly. But this is what they're doing. I don't even, half these arguments don't even make fucking any sense. I mean, there's this whole argument, now you see it on Facebook, the millennials are soft now. The millennials are too soft. Facebook, it's corrupted them. They're too soft. Give me a cheer if you think millennials are soft. Woo, right. If you think millennials are soft, good sir, then why is knife crime at an all-time high? When was the last time you stabbed someone for dissing Auntie Sandra on a YouTube freestyle in the park? Like, I don't understand how they can be vegan snowflakes and knife-wielding maniacs at the same time. How can you find it so hard to stab a pig but not a person? Like, what is this because you grew up on gangster rap and Peppa Pig? What the fuck happened here? It makes no sense. And they try and you do it the same, right, with like sort of knife crime. Oh, the knife crime, Raul, it's a black crime. It's a black crime, Raul. It's a black crime. That's what you see on social media on some of those far-right papers. We've never had, Raul, gangs of lads running around beating each other up in this country before these black gangs arrived. I mean, really? Like, we didn't have the football hooligans of the 80s and 90s. Like, before that, we didn't have the mods and rockers going down to Brighton Beach and Margate kicking absolute fuck out of each other. But we've never had it with knives, Raul. We've never had it where gangs of lads have run round stabbing each other over who gets to control a particular piece of postcode. The entire medieval period was gangs of lads running round stabbing each other over who gets to control a particular piece of postcode. But that's what they're doing. That's what social media does. It gets into your brain. It gets in that bit between the tangible and the intangible, that bit between the conscious and the unconscious, that bit that makes you feel. Now, I just don't buy these arguments that they make. Like, I mean, the old have never got the young have never got the old. That's existed for time immemorial. I'm 27, I got grey hairs now. I'm a little bit bit in the middle. I don't understand the 18, 19-year-olds these days. They're out here, they're wearing bum bags over their shoulders, they're listening to mumble rap, they're eating each other's ass. I don't get it, fucking. But I don't get the old people either. I mean, the old people, that's the generation that told me that, like, Bill Cosby, Rolf Harris and Jimmy Savile were wholesome, family-friendly entertainers. But if I was to pirate download, I'm the criminal. I pirate downloaded Bill's DVDs. I shared them at school. I didn't sell them. I wasn't a criminal. I was a pedo Robin Hood. That's what I was. It makes no sense, but the more and more business profit, the more and more we as a community and as a society lose, because we all seem to be watching each other now. And every time you say something, things don't happen in the confines of this room, they happen on social media. You're not just playing to your audience, you're playing to so many different people, and that's why we've got this new sort of version of celebrity deathmatch where you just see the weirdest reiterations of feuds, like Jimmy Kimmel and Kanye West. I never thought I'd see them beef. There's weirder than that. There's Snoop Dogg and Paul Gascoigne. How the fuck did that happen? I mean, Iggy Azalea and Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig's not a sentient being. What the fuck happened? Is this because she knows that the kids love him? Like, I don't know. It makes no sense to me. But look, I will concede. Like, there is no smoke without fire. Everything comes from some sort of reason. Millennials can't be soft. I know this for a fact. When I went to university as a kid, 18, when we was in Freshers Week, he'd gone to Marlborough College, a £20,000 a year boarding school, and he accused me of being racist because my dad owned a corner shop and I joked about it. He accused me of being racist for that. That wasn't even, like, it's true. My dad owns a corner shop. He then accused that of being racist. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what did you expect my dad to do as a new immigrant here in the 60s to go, well, I could feed my wife and kids if I buy this corner shop, but no, that would perpetuate stereotypes and annoy white liberals in half a century. I'll go work in the aquarium. That's a job that Asian people don't do. Like, what were you expecting? I mean, they also said, oh, you know, like, he also had to go at me for using the word packy. Now, look, if anyone gets to use the word packy, it is me. Well, not really, not since we invaded Kashmir, but nonetheless. Like, at the time, I could have used the word. And let me tell you this, I was raised a certain way. I was raised to be told that actions speak louder than words. And there are so many people who still come into my dad's corner shop and call it the packy shop. But you know how we feel about them? They're good people. They're kind people. On a spiritual level, they're very friendly to us. On a spiritual level, they pay our fucking wages. They give us £50 a week. They'd spend their weekly shop there. And you know how we feel about them? We prefer these people who spend £50 a week at our shop and call it the packy shop than you liberals who call it the local grocery store and spend all your money at fucking Waitrose. We prefer them, but millennials can't be soft, man. I'm aware of this. Before I used to do this for a living, I used to work in an office, right? And in this office, I worked with a new graduate. She was called Mageaean, right? It was quite a plush office job. And Mageaean, she put in a HR complaint against the PC systems at our work, right? She put in a human resources complaint against the machines we worked with, like this was fucking Terminator. And you know why? Because the PC systems had an autocorrect system, and that autocorrect system autocorrected her name from Michaela to Michael. Now look, I'm not saying women don't have to deal with misogyny and sexism in the workplace that I would never be able to empathize with as a man. But if you're launching a HR complaint about a non-sentient being for acting misogynistically, maybe you're not a victim, maybe you're entitled, because in my personal opinion, the only people who can launch HR complaints about non-sentient beings are Pakistani babies in the Khyber Valley getting blown to bits by drones. They are the only ones, and there are unintended consequences to every action you do. So the unintended consequence, for example, for saying that suicide is never ever selfish. Technically, you absolve Jeffrey Epstein if he did kill himself, and technically, you absolve Hitler. The unintended consequence to genocide is you help with global warming. The unintended consequence to Michaela thinking she was sticking up for all women who faced misogyny in the workplace was that the entire office started to call her Michael. There are unintended consequences to everything we do. And the unintended consequence to the left wing trying to shut down and trying to censor people like Jordan Peterson, Tommy Robinson, K.E. Hopkins,
and Joe Rogan. What the fuck is everyone's problem with that guy? He's just a stone confused man asking questions about society and DMT. That is it.
Right? It's that we now know more about her than ever before. We now, she's being referenced in a comedy show like she's fucking One Direction or a cultural reference. That should not happen. I know more about this woman than I should. I know that her daughter is called India. I shouldn't know that. She's the only India in Britain that don't wear a bindi. I should not know that, ladies and gentlemen. But, I mean, these are shock jocks. And the way clicks and the way income works on social media, they're always going to say more and more inflammatory things, because 100,000 angry emojis is worth a lot more than 7 likes. Let me tell you that for free. But on top of that, I mean, they're shock jocks. It's in the name, they're meant to shock you, but my comedians I'm a fan of, my heroes in comedy, they never got in trouble for things they said on stage. They actually got in trouble for things they did off stage. Now my hero, the reason I'm here today, ladies and gentlemen, is a man called Aziz Ansari. Now if you don't know who Aziz Ansari is, basically Aziz Ansari was to young male Asian comedians, he was very successful, very famous, a big influence to us all. Like he had 2 sitcoms on Netflix, several specials, but then a couple of years ago, Aziz Ansari faced accusations of sexual misconduct, and now very rightfully Aziz Ansari's hero credentials very much up for question. Now if you still don't know who Aziz Ansari is, basically Aziz Ansari was to young male Asian comedians what Louis C.K. is to young male white. That does not work. Let me rejig that. If you don't know who Louis C.K. is, Louis C.K. was to young male white comedians what Bill Cosby is to young male black. Fuck, none of this works. But I don't know, I find it very disappointing, because to walk in this room, right, and to sort of navigate what 50 or 100 people want, realise that you're taking them on a path that they like, realise that they don't like something else, and divert them down a journey they want to go on. That requires empathy for the way people feel. If anything, that requires an increased empathy for the way people feel. But I don't know. A lot of people said, Raul, never talk about this on stage. I mean, number one, you cannot make it funny, and from the looks on some of your faces, they were right. They also said, Raul, I mean, come on, you can't talk about this. You're a man. This should be a woman's story to tell. And I agree, it should be a woman's story to tell. But I think we need to be having the most open and honest discussion about this, no matter your gender, because otherwise there'd be no resolution. But I don't know. You identify as a woman?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2019. You got to be careful in it. But like, you identify as a woman. What's your name, my lady?
Evelyn.
Sorry?
Evelyn.
Evelyn, a pleasure to meet Evelyn. Very simple question. Do you think I can talk about this as a man? If you say yes, I'll continue to talk about it. If you say no, fantastic. See, consent, it's not that fucking difficult. Now, I used to love that joke, ladies and gentlemen, but the Aziz thing gave me cause for pause, because by the woman's own admission, I mean, she never actually said no. She never physically or literally said no. She just gave subconscious indications that she was uncomfortable, and this led to some huge debates happening around it. A lot of men were saying one thing to men and another thing to women. It was 2 different conversations. What men would say to men is, but Raul, I mean, she never said no, did she? I mean, wasn't rape, was it? It was a normal sexual experience. She's run away in floods of tears, and that's all that's happened. She's trying to chalk it down as rape. And women, when they'd hear this, they'd say, no, I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry. But if a woman runs away from something you consider a normal sexual experience in floods of tears, is that not that rape culture we've been talking about for the past few decades? And men would say, no, I'm not denying that. As you can see, it says on my Tinder bio, I am a feminist. Raul, I mean, she never said no. And I find this very dangerous. I find this very difficult when men have one conversation with men and another conversation with women, when men don't feel comfortable enough to put how they really feel on the table, because I believe that's what one president called locker room talk. Now, a lot of people, they went somewhere on either side. In the aftermath of this debate, some people said, Aziz, he needs to be cancelled forever. Other people, they said, he's done absolutely nothing wrong. I think society and Aziz himself have found themselves somewhere in the middle, because if you don't know, Aziz released a special 2 weeks ago on Netflix where he addressed the allegations. It was very well received, but me personally, I mean, I don't know. A lot society's kind of got to that point where they think, you know, essentially, while this article raised a very interesting, much needed debate about how women are sometimes socialised to be like Victorian children, to be seen and not be heard, to not put their autonomy forward when they feel uncomfortable. I mean, me personally, I wish we had cancelled Aziz. I wish we'd exposed every Asian actor as a sex pest and cancelled them. Like, I wish we'd cancelled so many Asian acts that essentially next year the BBC Big Asian Comedy Night were forced to rebrand as the BBC Big Raul Kohli Night. That's what I wish happened. Like, I wish we cancelled everyone. I wish we cancelled Russell Peters. I wish we cancelled Veer Das. I wish we cancelled Jackie Chan. Ain't even my type of Asian, but I want to be in Rush Hour 5. Fuck him. But I don't know, man, in the aftermath of this, a lot of people, they said, Raul, I mean, you got to stop watching Aziz, you got to stop watching Louis, you got to stop watching Bill now that they've done what they've done. Not just new releases, but their old stuff too, and I just didn't know, because for me personally, I mean, what they did off stage, objectively, yes, it was wrong, but does that make their comedy objectively unfunny? I don't know. Like, where are we drawing our lines, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, the Roman Empire, that was built on genocide and slavery, but we need roads. We need aqueducts and sewage systems. Look at Mengelé's experiments, man. There's no doubt. Nobody in this room can deny that his experiments in Nazi Germany were disgusting, right? But the results of those experiments have led to medical advancements that can save countless millions of lives. Do we now turn around those countless millions of lives who can be saved and go, no, you don't get to access this medicine because of where it came from? Like Snoop Dogg, he murdered a human being. But gin and juice is a banger. Where do we draw our lines, ladies and gentlemen? I don't know. I only have questions, no answers. But while I would concede again that all of these comedians, they got called out for sexual proclivities they should have been called out for, a musician I'm a fan of, he got called out for something that I just wasn't so sure should be called out. It was a rapper by the name of Kodak Black, right? And he got called out on social media because he said he was not attracted to dark-skinned women. Now, at first, the Twitter mob, they came out on social media, they said, you're disgusting, you're entrenching racist beauty standards, you make me sick, I'm never buying a ticket to see you again, I'm never listening to your music again. And at first, I kind of agreed, but then eventually I saw this picture of Kodak Black and I kind of got confused. Because I mean, he's a black man with black in his name and he's not attracted to black women. That made no sense to me. All of a sudden I wasn't angry at him for entrenching racist beauty standards. I was upset at him for being a victim of racist beauty standards. He doesn't love women who look like him. He doesn't love himself, ladies and gentlemen. And really, is his sexual preference where we're going to draw the line with Kodak Black? Because Kodak Black is currently in jail for kidnapping, armed robbery and battery. I mean, really? Or his sexual preference is the thing here? I mean, like, are we going to start calling out people for their sexual preferences, ladies and gentlemen? Because we all have them. In that deep primal part of our brain, they're there. We can pretend they're not, but it's a reality. It's not a nice reality, it just is. I hold my hands up. I got sexual preferences. I got a thing for blondes, because growing up in the 90s, I used to watch WWE wrestling during my sexual awakening. There was a very attractive wrestler called Trish Stratus. Now I have a thing for blondes. For a similar reason, I also have a thing for Latinos, because of a Latino wrestler called Lita. I'm also attracted to Asian women, because they were romanticized in the Bollywood movies I watched growing up. I'm also attracted to Afro-Caribbean women, because they were sexualized in hip-hop. Okay, I'll fuck anybody. I'm not the best example. But I mean, are we really going to start calling out people's sexual preferences, ladies and gentlemen? Because we all have them, and ladies, you have them too. I see it on your Tinder bios. No men under 6 foot. And as a man who stands at a proud 5'8", you might as well write no darkies. That's how that makes me feel. I matched the other day with a girl on Tinder, and it had on her bio, I'm like a roller coaster ride. There's a height requirement. So I messaged honest as I could. I said, yo love, I'm 5'10". Does that match the height requirement? And she replied, caps lock lol. Caps lock lol, as if to compound my humiliation. Soz hun, but I'm 6'2", and I think I might be embarrassed and even a little bit ashamed walking hand in hand with a man that's smaller than me. Bye, Frodo. Now me, being the calm, compassionate and understanding man I am, I responded and I said, not to worry, Petal. You know what? I think I'd be a little bit embarrassed and even a little bit ashamed walking hand in hand with a woman that's wider than me. Bye, Shamu. Now, I'm not proud of what I said, right? Of course I'm not proud of what I did, but she took away my humanity first. The anxiety of the primal part of my brain just came out swinging, right? I was just upset, man. I was angry. Who's the bigger villain? She took away my humanity first. That maybe doesn't justify what I did. Of course it doesn't. And you know it's not true. That's the depressing thing. I'm matched with her, for fuck's sake. Of course I got a thing for whiter women. I had my first wank over Queen Latifah. Like... But who's the bigger villain? And this is the thing about Tinder. I mean, the unintended consequence of it is that it has turned us shallow and crass. I don't even think that's the worst thing I'd done on Tinder. The worst thing I ever did was I got catfished, man. This woman, she did not quite look as she did in her pictures. I turned up to the date. I didn't know what to do. This is my first time ever experiencing it. And to my discredit, I just ran. Didn't even text her or anything. And I'm pretty ashamed by that. Now, some of you may be thinking in the back of your heads, well, Raul, she's been dishonest first. I mean, she lied about her appearance. That's not your fault, mate. That's hers. Nah, that makes me a misogynist, period, right? Because the amount of times I've been into McDonald's, I've ordered a cheeseburger, and the cheeseburger I have received looks nothing like the one in the pictures. And yet I have still put my penis in it, like... But the unintended consequence of Tinder is that it turns us into shallow and crass people. But the intended consequence, which actually sort of helps with people like Aziz, is that it provides men a safe space to hit on women, because, you know, in this day and age, there's a lot of conversation about that. I read my third wave feminism. You can't hit on women in the office. That's an abuse of power. You can't hit on women in public. Women deserve to go about their day without being sexually harassed and continuously hit on and sexualized, man. You can't hit on women here, because that's how you ruin Granddad's funeral, you know? That's kind of how things work, and Tinder provides a safe space for men to hit on women. I understand. I do feel very bad about both those women I met on Tinder, because women have to deal with it a lot harder than men. I'm aware of that, man. That the mold, sexualization, and the standard of conventional attraction women have to meet is just beyond reality, man. And men just don't have to meet that. But the more and more we move forward as a society, more and more women have people to talk to, institutions they can turn to, whereas men, we don't really have anyone we can talk to. We don't really have any institutions we can speak to, and we don't feel like we meet the molds of sexualization. We don't feel like conventionally attractive men. And I know this for a fact, right? Because I used to smoke. And the first time I tried to give up smoking, what happened was, instead of substituting it for beer or sugar, I found what I did was every time I wanted to smoke, I started to wank instead. Genuinely. And that didn't work for me, man, because I mean, like, first off, I used to smoke 20 a day. Don't have the time to be wanking 20 times a day. And on top of that, when I'm doing this on the circuits, I mean, the other comedians, they don't mind if I nervously smoke at the back before I come on stage. But if I nervously start to wank before I come on stage, I mean, shit, I'm a good comedian, but I'm not Louis C.K. That shit will get you in trouble. But I don't think that's the right message we should be sending to the kids. Society, not the kids. Because, you know, it's ridiculous. I mean, if I go outside right now, it's scientifically proven that if I regularly smoke, that will cause lung cancer. It's also scientifically proven if I regularly masturbate, that will reduce my chances of getting testicular cancer. Yeah, if I go outside right now, I do the thing that causes cancer, that's absolutely fine and legal. But if I do the things that reduces my chances of getting cancer, I'll get arrested. That ain't the right message to send out. So I think maybe that's how we heal the divisions in society. Maybe that's how we answer the big divide. We just have little wanking areas outside with red lights, little cum trays on the desk, people coming outside being like, I don't even do this regularly, I'm just a social wanker. But I found smoking was a more effective way of dealing with my time than masturbation was, right? Because I could do it in public, it was a better stress relief. So what I decided to do is I decided to smoke even heavier. I started to smoke 40 to 60 a day. And when I started to smoke 40 or 60 a day, there was another unintended consequence, ladies and gentlemen. And that unintended consequence was I started to suffer from erectile dysfunction. And that was hard. Well, it wasn't, that's the point. difficult, man, but this is the thing about sex and sexuality that we never really talk about, ladies and gentlemen. For all the conversation around it, I mean, it's quite a beastly thing. It is the one thing that links us back all the way to our ancestors. It's the one thing that links us to the animal kingdom. It's not the pinnacle of human achievement, is it, sex and sexuality? Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't go, oh, the Parthenon, that's the same as hentai and bondage. Like, that's not quite there, is it? And that's why when you see people trying to go about getting sex, they go about it in very, very antisocial ways. They go about it in very, very beastly ways. Like, you go to a nightclub, you will see a man walk up behind a woman he has never spoken to, and with absolutely no shame just kind of start doing this. But similarly, you go to a nightclub, you will see a woman respond to being hit on like that by doing this. And I just find it strange that a nightclub is the only sort of social environment where that behaviour is accepted and actively encouraged. Because I tried that in Nando's the other day, ladies and gentlemen. People really weren't as chilled. In hindsight, I shouldn't have picked a woman with a pram, but you live and you learn, ladies and gentlemen. But you know, I used to go to nightclubs, man, and when I was a teenager, I used to identify 15 years, I'd say I identified as a lad. Give me a cheer if you identify as a lad now. Nobody ever answers that they identify as a lad. Like 15 years ago it was cool. Nowadays you identify as a lad, it's the equivalent of having rape apologists seared onto your forehead. It's not a very cool fit, but the reason I identify with lad culture was I was a brown kid in the northeast of England post 9/11. I stuck out like a sore thumb wherever I went. I was just trying to fit in. So how do you fit in, ladies and gentlemen? You internalise your external stimuli. So you go in your castle, you know the men there, pretty manly. You go in your castle, you know the women there, also pretty manly. So I fit it in by being manly, by being a lad. Now, of course, when it comes to sexism and misogyny, of course, men take the blame there. Of course, men are trash. But I mean, women, you can be trash as well. Like my grandma, man. Alright, this Brexit woman, the one that doesn't want me to bring a white woman home, that's the tip of the iceberg. She is the most racist human being you will ever meet in your life. The things she says about Muslims and Pakistanis would make your stomach churn. It makes my stomach churn. She makes Tommy Robinson look like an imam, mate. She hates Muslims, and genuinely, if it was Facebook, I would block her. But it's not Facebook. I can't just block somebody in real life. This is a woman who raised me, who gave her life to me, right? So how do I deal with this scenario? Do I smack her in the face like the cash point in Glasgow? Like, how do I deal with this? Because honestly, at this point, I've just come to understand, I come to tolerate her racism, because the reason my grandma is so racist towards Pakistanis and Muslims is because she went through partition. Now, for those who don't know what it is, it's where India and Pakistan were cut in two. All the Indians on the Pakistani side had to escape to India. All the Pakistanis on the Indian side had to escape to Pakistan. And this led to huge violence on either side. Both sides seen horrific, horrific things, right? Now, my poor grandma, she set off at the age of 7. She set off with her father and her 5 brothers. She was the only one that made it, right? Because on the way, she was accosted by a group of Pakistani Muslim guys heading the other way. And as they were accosted in front of her face, my grandma, she saw her 5 brothers and her father beheaded in front of her face. Now, I'll admit, this is never going to win Dave's best joke at the Fringe. But if I tell you that life story, I tell you that life experience, maybe you can come to understand and tolerate yourself why she does not like Pakistanis and why she does not like Muslims, right? Because when I was 7, I wasn't living that life experience. I wasn't living that life story. When I was 7, I ran away from home because my sister forced me to watch an episode of Neighbours over Dragon Ball Z. I had siblings, I had cable TV, I still wasn't fucking happy. But maybe when I tell you that life story and that life experience, you can come to understand and you can come to tolerate why I don't really like Australians. But the more and more I think about these history of abuses committed against marginalised groups, the more and more I think we all take responsibility, both as a society and as individuals. I mean, look at some of the ones who slipped through the net. Look at R. Kelly, ladies and gentlemen. How did R. Kelly slip through the net? I mean, 10 years ago, that guy went to court for child sex offences. There was a video of him urinating on a 14-year-old child, but 10 years later, we're now surprised he runs an underage sex cult. I mean, really? Look at R. Kelly's daughter. R. Kelly had a teenage teenage daughter. Now, a few years ago, as a 15-year-old, that daughter came out as transgender. She's now revealed she isn't in fact transgender. She is in fact a lesbian, but she just thought at 15, she thought the only way to like girls was if you were a boy, so she thought she was transgender. Now, that may be the very beautiful and very moving and very heartfelt story of a girl who in the spotlight was having difficulty with finding her sexuality and had to make some very tough decisions while in the public limelight. It may be that, or maybe, just maybe, even R. Kelly's daughter knew it was not safe to be a teenage girl around R. Kelly, even if you're his daughter! This is the remix to Ignition, hot and fresh out the kitchen. Mama rolling the body, got every man in here wishing, sipping on coke and rum. I'm like, so what, I'm drunk. It's the freaking weekend, babe, about to piss on my son. Was that offensive? Nah, I don't know, was it? Some people would say it's massively offensive. Some trans people would say it offends their identity entirely. Some feminists, TERFs I believe they'd call, well, they say trans women aren't real women anyway. They can fuck themselves, a great joke, keep it in. Some feminists have told me personally they find the joke disgusting. Some trans people have told me they absolutely love the joke, but who do I listen to? When there are 7 billion opinions out there and I can see every single one of them just endlessly scrolling through my newsfeed and every single opinion is different, who do I turn to? Definitely not my trans friend. I asked her about a joke, she loved it, man, but she's not a very politically correct person to begin with, and that's why I don't listen to her for jokes. I mean, she thinks Me Too was a bunch of hoo-ha about nothing. Now, obviously, I don't agree with that, but as a result, I don't listen to her for jokes. She's not a very politically correct person. Sometimes, I try and be more politically correct around her because she's transgender. I get things wrong. I make myself look like more of a dick than I actually am. She told me the other day that her flatmate was a male man. I got confused and I thought these were the new gender pronouns we were using. I was like, oh yeah, he's a male man, I'm a male man, you're a female man. That's how this shit works. Turns out this guy works for Royal Mail, like. But I think the inherent problem is my transgender friend, she can't empathize with cisgender women. Cisgender women, they can't empathize with my life as an Asian man. American judges can definitely empathize with being rapists, like. But people's lack of empathy and the fact that we have not all walked in each other's shoes means definitely that always everybody's hero is bound to be somebody else's villain. Look at the heroes we're taught to worship in the West, man. Winston Churchill, he's on our £5 note. Now, he did some objectively heroic things, you can't deny. He won World War II. He saved countless millions of Jewish lives from the Holocaust, but it's the same Winston Churchill that ran his own concentration camps in Kenya, that sent the black and tans to Ireland, that killed 4 million Indians in a famine in 1 year. 4 million Indians, 1 year, 6 million Jews over 12. Can you compare those tragedies? Should you compare those tragedies? I don't know. I only have questions, no answers, ladies and gentlemen. Who is the bigger villain? Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers of the United States of America, right? He's on their $2 bill. He wrote the document, The Freedom of Man is starts. No man is born a slave. Without his writings, without his philosophies on human liberties and civil rights, institutions like Amnesty International would not exist without him today. But it is the same Thomas Jefferson that used to own 600 slaves. So what do we do as a society? How do we turn around, confront our past now? Do we turn around now to cry all these previous heroes as villains and tear down their statues? Or do we just give Hitler a break? Okay, I feel like I've lost some of you with that bit. Look, all I'm saying is, as a Geordie, I'd rather see a statue of Hitler in Grantham than Thatcher. Go fuck yourselves. Now, what I am saying, ladies and gentlemen, is actually if you were to tear down those statues, who are you going to replace them with? Heroes of colour? Let's take a look at some of my personal heroes, right? Malcolm X. I grew up on that guy's autobiography, right? This man advanced the civil rights cause for African Americans beyond measure. But this is the same Malcolm X that wrote in his autobiography that women are good for nothing but prostitution, right? This is the same Malcolm X who used the N-word in his autobiography 3,019 times. In Hitler's Mein Kampf, he didn't use it once, I'm just saying. If not Malcolm X, how about Gandhi, the man who liberated India with non-violence? Surely he couldn't have done anything wrong. Well, I mean, this is the same Gandhi that believed in apartheid in South Africa because he believed Afro-Caribbean people were subhuman. This is the same Gandhi that used to make the most beautiful 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls share a bed with him in the villages in India that he lived just to prove he was closer to God. Now, that's the man you want to put statues up of? A racist man who also reduced mere children to sexual objects. And when I started to think about these poor girls in India, these 11, 12, 13-year-old girls, and I thought about Gandhi, my brain went into overdrive. I started to think, would I have known any girls who would have been in India around that age, around about the same time? Come on! And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where the title of this show came from. It wasn't me provocatively poking fun at your nan perhaps being touched up. It came out the deep-rooted fear that my nan was touched up by Gandhi. But I did some research. Luckily for me, my nan wasn't touched up by Gandhi. I'm not the product of Gandhi. It's all good. But my grandma was married at 12. It's fucked that, innit? What the fuck do I with that information? Like, my grandma is happy. She's always been happy. She loved my grandfather when he was alive. So how do I turn around to the woman who helped raise me, the woman who escaped partition, the woman who crossed the world to help give me more opportunities, the woman who visits her husband's grave every week? How do I turn around to her and go, Grandma, you shouldn't be happy, you should be traumatized. Grandma, you are a victim of the patriarchy. Grandma, the man you loved was scum. How do I turn around and have that conversation, ladies and gentlemen? How do I begin that conversation? I can't. Mainly because my grandma's English ain't the best and I don't speak Hindi. But that's not the point! If anyone does know the Hindi for patriarchy, let me know on the way out. But the more and more I think about all my heroes let me down, the more and more I'm really not surprised. I mean, that's what they do. They're narcissists. They're people who believe that in a planet of 7 billion, they as comedians, their voices mattered. People who decided that in a planet of 7 billion, they could rule the world. They could be politicians. Of course, they were going to be manipulators. Of course, they were going to do terrible things. And I'm not surprised any of them covered up. My grandma has Pakistani friends, man. She has Muslim friends. She just doesn't say any of the shit she says to me to them. And you're no different, guys. None of us are different. We all do this. I'm doing it right now with this comedy show. We cover up. We present a certain image of ourselves to the audience we play to. You all do it on Instagram. You all do it on Facebook. You all do it on all Twitter and everything like that. That's what we do. We cover up as humans, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not surprised that Jimmy Savile built children's hospitals on screen while being a serial paedophile off it. I'm not surprised Louis C.K. called himself a feminist on screen while being unfeminist off it. I'm not surprised Bill Cosby presented himself as a wholesome, family-friendly entertainer on screen while being a date rapist off it. None of that surprises me. And can you just imagine what somebody who had dedicated all of this thought and all of this time into putting this into an hour Edinburgh show would be covering up? Something fascinating happened to me there while I was in Harlem. And I think it's a fabulous insight into both comedy and psychology at large. Give me a cheer if you've been to New York. Yeah. Sydney, you're from New York, aren't you? Have you been to Harlem?
Yeah, I was a kid then.
You were a kid then. Did you walk through when you were a kid?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, well that does not help this story whatsoever. Has anyone walked through Harlem, New York? No. I see Amanda's done a survey, fucking hell. Not one person, right? Well, if you've never been to New York, the best way I can describe it is New York, the best way I can describe it is it's a bit like Thatcherism or Reaganomics personified in a city. Everyone's after the next buck. It's very fast moving. It's like London on roids. And the best way I can describe Harlem, New York is like a combination of that, but it's a very historically African-American area of New York. So there's a lot of people there's a lot of things that are very related to African-American culture, a lot of jazz bars, and there's a lot of people on the street selling mixtapes who fancy themselves the next big thing in hip-hop. They fancy themselves the next Biggie Smalls, they fancy themselves the next Tupac Shakur, they fancy themselves the next Honey G. Whatever your tipple is, right? And I was aware of this when I went there. And I'm street smart. I've been hanging around with Specky Rizwan for years. On top of that, I'm strong-willed. I ain't gonna buy a mixtape. Of course, I ended up buying a fucking mixtape, right? What happened was the mixtape salesman, he approached me very confidently. He approached me very calmly, and he made me feel very comfortable first. He didn't try and sell me the mixtape straight away. He caught me off guard. He walked up, and he was like, "Yo, dog! You look like the type of dude who knows their hip-hop."
And after a decade of hanging around with Specky Rizwan, I'm the type of dumb fuck who thinks he knows his hip-hop, right? So straight away, he'd made me feel good. Straight away, he made me feel calm. Straight away, he made me feel like his friend. He continued to make me feel like his friend. He continued to make me feel comfortable. He continued to make me feel like I belonged in Harlem, New York, and most importantly, like I knew my hip-hop. At the end of all his spiel, he pitched me his mixtape. Now, I wasn't intending on buying one, but how could I not? $5 it cost me, right? So I bought it. And as I left this interaction, I was thinking, that guy's done it. Like, he's got deep into my subconscious, and he showed that increased empathy you need to be an artist. He's made me feel so good about myself. I'm very excited to see what is on this mixtape. So I get home, back to my hostel, all excited, all apprehensive. I put the mixtape in the hostel CD player, I press play, and it was a blank CD. But I don't resent the con man, right? Because con men, comedians, it's the exact same job. So I've always seen a little bit of Specky Rizwan in myself. You'll see this behavior on dates. You'll see it in job interviews. What we're trying to do is we're trying to manipulate that little bit in your brain. That bit between the tangible and the intangible. That bit between the conscious and the unconscious. And we're trying to manipulate that bit. That bit that makes you feel. We're trying to manipulate that bit to get you guys to do things. Whether that be hold silence, pay attention to the narrative like you're doing beautifully right now. Whether that be laugh at the end of a punchline like you've been doing perfectly all night. Or whether that be buy a mixtape. Now, the next day, I'm in Harlem, New York again, but this time, circumstances have changed. I'm with two guys from my hostel. A trainee doctor from Somalia and his dorm mate, who's a trainee doctor from Missouri. As we're there, we're sharing a bucket of KFC together.
It was actually Popeyes, but we don't have that in the UK, so I had to use a different reference.
As we're eating this bucket of KFC, new mixtape salesman comes up, tries to sell us his mixtapes, but he doesn't make us feel comfortable first. He goes straight in for the kill. He walks up like, yo, guys, what about these mixtapes? Straight away, I'm like, oh, no. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I don't want your blank CDs. Thank you very kindly. And instead of making us feel comfortable, instead of giving us the carrot, this guy just gave us the stick. Because as soon as I rejected him, he just snapped. And he went, oh, I see. Yeah, I see it there with your KFC. You like black food, but you do not like black people. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, caught me off guard. Because this particular mixtape salesman was white. But I'm a man. And I'm a courageous, self-respecting man. So I did what any courageous, self-respecting man would have done in that given situation. I pushed the Somalian kid in front of me and I went, you're black, deal with this! But the Somalian kid, before he had a chance to say a thing, this mixtape salesman, this con man, whatever he was, he just showed that increased empathy, again, needed to be an artist. Because he just started reading people like he was Darren Brown. It was the most impressive thing I have single-handedly seen. He took one look at the Somalian and he went, oh, I see. I know you, motherfucker. Judges Miowski in complexion, you probably from Somalia. Am I right? Yeah, I'm right. And Judge Mwai, hold yourself like a little bitch. You ain't got no real-life experience in these streets. You probably a student or something, am I right? Yeah, I'm right. You training to be, let me figure this out. You training to be, is it a doctor? You training to be a doctor? He was right, ladies and gentlemen. He moved on to the next guy, and he goes, oh, yeah. And I know you, motherfucker. No way, you two ought to be friends if it wasn't for life circumstance. You must be trained to be a doctor as well. You share a dorm together or something, am I right? Yeah, I'm right. Let me figure this out. Just from your pasty white ass. Well, you hold yourself like a country bumpkin. You ain't from New York neither. You from the Midwest somewhere. The Rust Belt. Am I right? Yeah, I'm right. Let me figure this out. You from, is it Missouri? Am I right? He was right, ladies and gentlemen. 2 out of 2. We could not quite believe it. Then he came to me. And he goes, oh, yeah. And I know you, motherfucker. And I'm thinking, there is absolutely no way. Like, why would this mixtape salesman in the middle of Harlem, New York, begin to even comprehend when your Castle upon Tyne is? Like, has he seen Goal with Santiago Munez? Did he hear about Raul Moat in the news? Do they get Biker Grove in Harlem? What the fuck has happened here? But he takes one look at me dead in the eyes. And he goes, oh, yeah, I know you, motherfucker. I see motherfuckers like you here all the time. I can tell from your accent, you're from Wales.
That's what we do, bruh. Narcissists, empaths, whatever you want to call us. Human beings, I think, is the best term. We cover up one shitty aspect with another. So I may cover up my real angle with false happiness. Cover up subpar delivery with even worse video edits. Cover up my shitty accent with an attempt at Joe Exotics. We make you feel comfortable. We then make everything tense and hard to understand. And then just at that moment, when you're feeling uncomfortable, that's when we take whatever it is we want from you. Whether it be a con man in Harlem pretend to be a rapper, whether it be a comedian on a special pretend to be a victim, or whether it be a pedophile on webcam pretend to be a comedian.
Because all my heroes are dead in jail or touched up your nan, ladies and gentlemen. But I've never been anyone's hero. I'm a human being. And what's that they say about to err is human? I've made my mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. I've made my mistakes indeed. When I was a teenager, I cheated on girls, and then when they caught me, I gaslighted them to the point of mental abuse. I'm not proud of it, it's just what happened. I think the worst thing I ever did was the first time I went to a nightclub, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'd been at a gig the week before, a Lost Profits gig, funnily enough. And when I was at that gig, a girl, she ran up, she grabbed my arse, and she ran away giggling, right? And now the next week, I'm in a club for the first time in my life. I ain't spoke to many girls, I ain't flirted with too many girls, I don't know how you approach girls. And I see that the music is so loud, I can't hear anything. The smoke is so thick, I can't see anything. I see the way people are grinding on each other. I remember what happened last week at that Lost Profits gig, and I just started to think to myself, okay, well this is how you do it, innit? I internalize my external stimuli as I always do. And I assume that's how you hit on women. I walked up to a woman, and without her consent, I grabbed her arse. Now, some of you will be judging me for that, and you should judge me for that, because some of you would define that as sexual harassment. Others would fit my definition, which is sexual assault. You can't grab a woman without her consent. Nothing I can say can justify what I did that day. I can try and make an argument. Oh, well, you know, back then, times were different. Yeah, times were different. My dick worked. It still doesn't justify what I did, ladies and gentlemen. But at this point, if you are judging me now, I only have a few more questions to ask. And the first question would be, at this point, am I a man who made a mistake many years ago who's now actively trying to better himself? Or am I a man who's now confined to the bins of history forever as a sex pest? And if I am confined to the bins of history forever as a sex pest, am I as bad as Aziz, ladies and gentlemen? Is Aziz as bad as Louis, ladies and gentlemen? Is Louis as bad as Bill, ladies and gentlemen? Is Bill as bad as the Night King from Game of Thrones? Where do we draw our lines? And if you are judging me and you are to say I'm confined to the bins of history as a sex pest forever, fair enough. I give you the consent I did not give that lady all those years ago. But I do have one word of warning. Have we not already tried this? Not with misogyny, but with racism. I know I tried it, a lot of us tried it. We tried to ostracize every single person for every little microaggression they committed. And then when you ostracize and you ostracize and you ostracize, when you say there's no difference between calling it the Packy Shop in 1974 and being a paid up member of the Nazi party, then maybe, just maybe, you keep ostracizing, you ostracize, and you ostracize, and you ostracize, and all of a sudden the group you ostracize were bigger than those doing the ostracizing to begin with. And maybe that's how you get Brexit. Maybe that's how you get Boris. Maybe that's how you get Trump. Maybe that's how you get Zleman in the Czech Republic. Maybe that's how you get Orban in Hungary. Maybe that's how you get Erdogan in Turkey. Maybe that's how you get Salvini in Italy. Maybe that's how you get Modi in India. Maybe that's how you get Bolsonaro in Brazil. Maybe that's how you get Morrison in Australia. Right-wing, authoritarian, fascist leaders ruling the world. Because if you don't realize that you're trying to convey your politics in a media where there is endless information, where the smallest crime is as bad as the biggest, where people are bringing their own connotations, they can't work out what's true and what's false, what's right and what's wrong, maybe then you create the conditions with your hypersensitivity for fascists to rule. Because eventually everyone realizes that they're a little bit guilty. And that's not to say that the right didn't cause this as well. I hear the right. Freedom of speech! This is what they holler. Not realizing that they're being as hypersensitive as the left they so claim to hate. But what happens when you have freedom of speech? I mean, it's not under threat. Freedom of speech has never been more absolute. We're all engendered by social media now to say our piece, to make our opinion known. And what happens when everybody speaks in this room at once. Well, the comedy show is ruined because everybody's shouting and nobody is listening. And that's how the craziest and loudest voices rise to the top. And maybe if you hold individuals responsible for systemic errors, maybe that's how you create the conditions for liberalism to be obsolete. That and Russian intervention, but that don't fit the narrative of this show. Maybe I don't blame you on the left. Maybe I don't blame you on the right. Maybe I just blame one man. Maybe when Kim and Kanye were breaking the internet, we didn't realize the internet was breaking us. Maybe as Nietzsche said, stare too long at the abyss and the abyss will stare back at you. Maybe as Martin Luther King said, at the heart of human nature there's a Jekyll and Hyde. There's a schizophrenia. For every time you try and do good, there is something that pulls you back and makes you do bad. That primal part of your brain that has existed far longer than the empathy and consciousness part, that frontal lobe. And maybe, as Martin Luther King said, we need to remember that when putting up our temples and making our heroes. Or maybe, as Raul Kohli said, we need to remember that when we're pulling down our temples and pulling down our heroes. But I don't know. I have no answers. Only questions, ladies and gentlemen. So before I go, I gotta ask you one more question, but it relies on me sort of telling the truth. Because like Instagram, like Facebook, like Twitter, I covered up. I presented one story where I was in fact the villain and I was actually the victim. And I presented a story where I was the victim and in fact I was the villain. The first was the Glasgow story. Now, I said he ran over, he said, "Ah, Chinny, you wee fanny." That's not what he said, I just said that because it was funny. And what he actually said was he ran over and he went, "Leave that Packy kid alone!" Then he headbutted him. Now who's the racist, ladies and gentlemen? And then after that, we got to a situation where all of the people, including me, that guy was battering him. Then I ran in and I jumped on that guy. Then two passers-by, they were disgusted. They ran over, they also battered him. The next thing you know, you had 4 people stomping one guy and he went home in an ambulance. Now who are the bigger villains, ladies and gentlemen? Because that happens at just the click of a finger. Justice becomes bullying. And is that not where social media has led us? Where 7 billion opinions come down on one human being and people who've been racist or been caught on video doing something sexist end up killing themselves? Because that's happened. And as for the ass grabbing story, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still judging me, it might clear your conscience to know she didn't judge me. Because that day when I grabbed her arse, she turned around, she smiled ear to ear, she kissed me on the lips. That doesn't justify what I did that day, that's just what happened. After she kissed me on the lips, we had a bit of a drink, we had a bit of a chat. She told me she was a 54-year-old nurse. She lived in Cramlington. And after a bit of a drink and a bit of a chat, she took me back all the way to her place. So we made all the sweet, sweet love with all of the enthusiastic consent. 15 years ago. When I was innocent, when I was ignorant, when I was just a boy with the shittest soul patch you've ever seen in your life. To be precise, a 14-year-old boy with the shittest soul patch you've ever seen in your life. So while I may be guilty of sexual assault, ladies and gentlemen, she was guilty of being a paedophile. Who's the bigger villain? So, ladies and gentlemen, I just leave you with one thought. Am I a villain? Am I a victim? Am I a hero? Well, I'm not dead. I'm not in jail. But if you have an elderly relative that went dancing in your castle in 2004, well, I most definitely touched up your nan. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been All My Heroes Are Dead in Jail. I touched up your nan.
Shit, that's the jam.
On a surfboard, still trying to